Hello, patrons. It is I, Queen Auset-Heru, and thank you for joining me for another wonderful edition of The Witch Trials. So, today, let's get right into it, okay? Today, we are putting the Blair Witch on trial, okay? Now, let me give you a little bit of background before I get started. The Blair Witch Project was a movie that came out in 1999 when I was a young girl. Now, this movie is the basis for today's movie. This was the original, and there was a sequel to it, and there's been like a comic book, there was like a video game, there's been other multimedia that have come out of that original movie from 1999. And basically, this movie was what they call a mockumentary. It basically was mocking documentaries. It was pretending to be a real documentary about a witch, basically. She had been dead for like 200 something years, or was never dead, undead, some kind of thing. They never really explained it. And these young people go out into the woods to where this, this witch's, I guess, haunting, where all this paranormal activity has gone on. And they go out there to record, basically. They see some weird stuff, and one by one they end up dying. And at the end of the footage, all you see is somebody's foot, somebody screaming, and then it goes off. So they were trying to pretend as if these people went off in the woods, disappeared, and they found this footage sometime later, and they're showing it to you, and these murders are now unsolved. Well, a lot of people to this day think it's true, but the Blair Witch Project was never real. It was always just a mockumentary, But some people to this day still inbox me and ask me, is the Blair Witch real? You would not believe how many times I heard it. That's why when somebody asked me to do this movie for the Witch Trials, I went ahead and did it. So today's movie is a sequel from that original movie. Basically, one of the young ladies that went missing in the movie, her brother James was 4 years old at the time. And now here we are 17 years later, and James is still looking for his sister. So in today's movie, James is looking for his sister. He gets his friends and somebody who is like a film student to agree to go out and look, because somebody online posted a video clip that was supposed to be from the same woods that his sister disappeared from. So he was like, oh my God. He saw the video footage and thought it looked like his sister. So he goes out to find out, is his sister still alive in the woods being tortured by this satanic Blair Witch. So I'll give you a little summary of the plot, and then I'm going to tell you my virtues and vices. Basically, they go out into the woods. They go out with the guy that posted the video. Now, I'm going to tell you up front, as soon as they met this guy in the beginning of the movie, I knew something was wrong with him, because he had a Confederate flag on his wall. And as an African American, whenever somebody has a Confederate flag, the first thing for me is, what the hell? Everybody knows that they lost the Civil War, and everybody knows that during that time, my people were enslaved. So whenever I see somebody with a Confederate flag romanticizing that period of history, it makes me a little nervous, okay? So as soon as they walked in his house, there's a big Confederate flag on the wall. And I was like, something's up with this guy. I mean, immediately my witch senses went off, and I was like, oh, hell no. Now, mind you, there's a black guy and a black girl in the movie, and they both looked at the flag and then looked at each other. So we're all thinking the same thing. So this guy that posted the footage tells them that he will take them to the place in the woods where he found the videotape. All he said he found was the videotape. So he agrees to take them, but they have to take him and his girlfriend along with them. To me, this whole thing was shady from the jump. So the group reluctantly agrees because they felt the same way I do, and they go out into the woods with this couple, and they go looking for. Basically, they're trying to find the house that the footage was taken in, because the brother James is theorizing that his sister must be in this house. And if they can find the house, maybe he can find his sister. I felt really sorry for James. I mean, I knew it was a movie and it wasn't real, but I felt sorry for him, because I'm thinking, like, what if that was my sister, So I really did feel sorry for him. So they go out in the woods. It gets crazy. Basically, everybody ends up dead, and they have more video footage. Basically, that's basically the bottom line. It was a very fast movie too. It was only like 89 minutes. And the next thing you know, everybody's dead, and they have more footage, which is very similar to the footage from the very beginning. Because basically, they're alluding to the fact that yes, there is this demonic undead witch living in the woods, and we're getting ready to see what I think about that aspect of it. So that's the summary. At the last scene, all you see is the camera continuing to play, and then it cuts off. That's basically all you see. So let's get into it. First of all, this movie is awful. This movie is awful. Now, I'm going to tell you, I was entertained by this movie. I was very entertained by the movie, meaning it had a lot of suspense and the jump scares, that kind of thing. I'm sitting here watching it right in this same spot, and I told my landlord she could come by because she had to do something for me. I left the door open for her, but I had the headphones on and I'm watching the movie. It wasn't until she got up on me that I recognized it was her. And I had the worst jump scare because I'm watching this movie that's holding the suspense and they're scaring you with the music. And she walks in and I screamed and jumped like 10 feet into the air. So it was very entertaining. Me and her were cracking up. I was very entertained by the movie. I thought it was fun in that kind of way. But it's awful in the sense that this is not any real witchcraft. I'm gonna tell you up front, there's no real witchcraft. None. You see nothing. You don't even see the witch. It's called the Blair Witch, and you don't even see the Blair Witch. You see her running by and running by and running by. You never actually get a full-on chance to look at her. And she's not a witch. She's a monster. She's a demon. A witch is a person, okay? She look like me. I'm a witch. This is what a witch looks like, all right? A witch doesn't look like a 7-foot monster with elongated. She looked like Bigfoot, more so than a witch. She had elongated arms, and it looked awful. So first of all, there is no real witchcraft. This thing is not a witch. This thing is some kind of monster, first and foremost. So I want to go there immediately. This movie only had 3 things in it that I liked. So I'm going to start with what I didn't like because it's a much longer list. First of all, let's count together how many things I didn't like. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. This movie had 14 vices. Yeah, 14. This movie had 14 vices, and it only had 3 virtues. So let me tell you the vices. Okay, so this takes place in a place called Burkittsville, Maryland. It's a made-up place. This movie came out in 2016, and the place is called the Black Hills Forest. According to the movie, the footage was from May 15th, 2014. So what did I hate? What are the vices? Number 1, there's a skeptic. The black guy in the group is a skeptic. And I'm sitting there like, why is there always a skeptic in these movies that always ends up being the first one dead? I had to vice that immediately just for being so cliche. Every single horror movie that I've seen since I was a child has the same character. A skeptic who doesn't believe any of it, but he's going anyway just to appease his friends or her friends. Most of the time it's a guy. This time it was the black guy. He made me want to punch him in the face. Even when stuff started happening, he's still being cynical. And it's like, dude, hello? Do you see what's happening here? So the skeptic cliche got on my nerves. 2, strange sounds in the middle of the night. Cliche. Every time there's a horror movie, you hear what? The snapping of the twig. Every single horror movie, there's a snapping of the twig, then there's rustling of leaves, the same cliche noises in the woods that we all hear. It was like, dang, I would have given anything for just something a little bit more original than that. It's the same thing from the first movie and from every other horror movie you've ever seen. Then, there were these symbols placed all over the campsite. They look like pentagrams. A pentagram is a star, a five position. What's that? 5-pointed star. So the pentagram is not a symbol of evil. They put it up like it was a curse or a hex or something like that. The pentagram is a symbol of earth, air, fire, water, spirit. 5 elements. That's what the pentagram represents. It doesn't represent the devil or evil. If it's turned upside down, that is a symbol that's used by certain groups. I don't know if they identify as Satan worshipers or as evil per se, but they definitely are not the same as the group that uses it in the upright, which uses it to mean the elements. So up front, they had that part twisted. That, of course, I had to vice because I was like, that's not cool. Then the witches were stalking people in the woods. The witch or witches, they don't let you know if it's one or if it's many, because you only see one witchy demon Sasquatch looking thing running by, but you do hear other women's voices. So they give the impression that there's a coven out there, but you never really see anything but the flashing back and forth. And I'm going to tell you, I know a lot of witches. Seriously, I know a lot of them. I've been to a lot of pagan pride events. I have witches on my Facebook page. I talk to witches all the time. I don't know not one witch that goes in the woods stalking people. Not one. I've never heard one of them say, hey, we're going to go do a ritual. We're going to go stalk, people at their campsites. Want to come? That does not happen. That is totally made up. Loss of time and the sun not rising. Supposedly this witch put a curse on these woods with a spell, which you could curse an object or a place. That could actually happen. But the curse that she put on makes you lose time. And there's no way to do a spell to make other people lose time. For example, when they woke up in the morning, it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. They were supposed to get up in the morning. So they were like, oh, that's the curse. The curse makes you lose time. And then another time they got up at 7 o'clock in the morning, but it was still dark outside and the sun never rose. There is no spell that's going to keep the sun from rising. And it's going to keep, you losing time and being in the wrong time. So, nah, you can curse an area or curse some woods, but more than likely what you would get from that area if you cursed it would be bad energy, negative vibrations, bad luck even. Not likely you're going to be losing time and the sun just stops rising. That is not likely at all. If somebody had a spell to manipulate time, do you know how much money they would sell that information for? They wouldn't just play games in the woods with hikers. Trust me. Moving objects telekinetically. A lot of these movies that I have reviewed moved objects telekinetically. And we all know if you watch old studies that telekinesis is possible, but not the level in which, like, they throw cars. In the movie, they were throwing tents and, stuff like that. You generally don't throw large things with telekinesis. You can move things with your mind, usually small distances, usually small weights, maybe even bend something with your mind. But I've never seen somebody throw a car or a tent that was full of equipment, things along those lines. It's a real gross exaggeration. Witches put a parasite in their victim. One of the victims, the black girl, who was really pretty, by the way, beautiful actress, was walking across the stream and she cut her foot on a rock. And by the time they got to the campsite to look at it, which was a long time later, she had some kind of parasite in her foot. Like the witches had some kind of way, like I don't even know how, they with a spell, I guess, put a parasite in through the cut. And then later on it comes out of her leg. It was gross. And to me it was just, horror movies have this thing with blood and gore, and to me it was just that they were just trying to show some blood and gore happening. But a spell to put a parasite into your victim, I couldn't see. Maybe some type of potion or something that could make somebody sick, but it's still, I couldn't imagine it putting a parasite into the person unless you physically put the parasite in the potion and they drank it or something like that. But nah, that was awful, and it was gross to watch. Witches kidnapping people in the woods. So they're stalking people and then they're kidnapping people. Witches do not kidnap people in the woods. That's called a serial killer. That's not a witch, okay? That is called a serial killer, not a witch. Disappearing and reappearing house. This house that he thinks his sister is being held in, and the house that everybody else seems to have died in, seems to disappear and reappear. Because when they searched the woods, they didn't find this house. When they used the drone, they didn't see this house. Then all of a sudden, the house reappears. When it first appears when his sister Heather in the first movie, and then in this movie it reappears and they all go into this house. And then the witch appears and hunts them down and kills them in the house. So this disappearing, reappearing house is ridiculous. I've seen a lot of movies that they would put a spell on the house so nobody could see it. So I'm guessing maybe that's what they did, was put a spell on the house. But again, there's no real life spell where you can put on an entire building and nobody's going to be able to see the building ever, except for when you want them to see the building. That is, I wish that magic was true. I would use that on myself and I would disappear and reappear when I wanted to. But nah, I wish. That is a total exaggeration. Then the witch is some kind of creature. She's not a witch. She's not a person. They keep calling her she, and they keep referring to this young girl who was apparently killed for witchcraft. In the 1700s, the Blair Witch is supposed to be some young girl from the 17 or 1800s who was murdered. We all know that during that time period and other time periods too, there have been witch hunts, I'll call them, for witches and witch burnings and things like that. So they're trying to say that this young girl basically was accused of witchcraft. Nobody knows if she really did witchcraft or not, but based on these movies, it would have to be yes. And she was, taken and tied to a tree and left to die, and apparently haunts and stalks anybody that lives anywhere near these, Black Hills forests. And she's not a witch. In that case, first of all, she's undead in that case, because we're talking 200 years ago. So even if she had survived being tied to the tree, she still would be like 200 years old. And also, she's some kind of creature because she don't look like a witch. She's not a person. A witch is a person. A very good person, a very neutral person, or a very dark person. Just a person, And she's not human. She looks like I said before, she looks like Sasquatch, with no hair, basically. Long arms, long legs. It's kind of gross looking. And you don't really get to see her full on, so I can't really describe her that well. But she's not a witch. She is a creature. This movie the title is deceiving. This should be called Blair Creature, Blair Demon, or something like that, because she's definitely not a witch. Then, oh my God, they had a part in the movie where they made this puppet. Now, witches do make poppets. We make them out, usually we make them out of like clay or fabric, but basically it's a doll. And the doll represents the person that you're going to do the witchcraft on. So if I made a doll on my family member who was sick, for example, I could make a doll, this puppet, and I could put healing herbs and pray on this doll and put it on my altar for my family member who may be in another country. And I can do witchcraft on them symbolically in that way. That's not all you have to do, but that's the end part of it, basically. So this witch makes these puppets, but she makes them out of wood and then puts them all over the campsite, like while they're sleeping. And I was like, you mean to tell me y'all was sleeping that hard that you didn't hear a witch come decorate the campsite? I mean, it was like 30 of these things. First of all, she would have had to have made them and then come and hung them up all over the campsite. And I was like, it's no way in hell that y'all would slept through her decorating the campsite with these puppets. And one of them had the girl's hair wrapped around it. The girl had purple hair, and one of them had purple hair wrapped around it. And she was like, oh my God, this thing has my hair on it. And the other girl who was angry with her, they had been going through it, the other girl like screamed at her and was like, oh my God, of course it has your hair on it. You're the one that did this. And she runs towards her. She grabs the poppet thing out of her hand and breaks it. And the girl whose hair it was, her body snaps in half and she's on the ground writhing in pain. And I'm sitting there looking at this shit like, are you fucking serious? Really? I've seen poppets. I've made poppets. I've used poppets many times. And no. If I popped it in half, the person is not going to crack in half. Okay? If I cracked it in half in anger and I was doing dark magic, it could hurt them, but they're not going to pop in half in front of me and just die and blood coming out her mouth. And I'm like, come on, y'all. Seriously. So that I had to vice that. That was awful. I definitely gave it advice for the Confederate flag for the reasons that I stated, because that's how I knew homeboy was something was wrong with homeboy, and I was like, but they went out in the woods with him anyway, and they all got killed. Again, I told you it's no real witchcraft in the movie. And the witch cursed these woods with a spell. And I was like, you can curse woods or a place with the spell. But the stuff that's going on in here, this is no spell I've ever heard of. Now, what did I like about this movie? I told you I liked a few things about this movie. I liked that the witch legends were fed by the history of witches and witchcraft. The legends that they told, they were all made up for the movies. They were based on real history, even though they were, made up. But they were based on real history. There were witch trials. There was many of them, and many people were killed. And most of those people were innocent people. If you really want to know about the burning times, as they're called, and you want to read about them, most of those people weren't even practicing witchcraft. Most of them were just people who somebody didn't like or had a beef against. So I really did enjoy the fact that it was based on old witch legends. Even the Blair Witch itself, which is again a fictional, it's not a real legend, it's a fictional legend, but it's based on real legends. There are really legends about young girls and young guys being murdered and putting curses on the town or saying I damn all of you, and maybe some supernatural things happen afterwards. There are stories like that happen in real life. So I did like that part. I also like the fact that the drone, the walkie-talkies, and the other technology was the magic did bother it. And I have noticed that magic does sometimes affect technology. Like sometimes, there's been times when I've been doing a reading online and the other person's energy knocked them offline or knocked my computer offline. Sometimes your energy does affect technology. If I'm angry, I've been angry before and things have exploded, like light bulbs. So technology can be affected by the energy of the witch. So that I thought was okay. It was a little exaggerated, like the drone crashed, and the walkie-talkies had static. I was like, that could happen. So some of the stuff could happen. So I gave them that one. And they found rock formations in the woods. And we do use rock formations sometimes in witchcraft. Now, not like the ones they use. They had like a big rock and other rocks piled on top of it to represent I don't know what. But I have been in the woods and done ritual, and we didn't have an altar, which obviously you're not carrying the table with you. And we always built an altar. We always took some big rocks and built an altar to put the cup on, to put the athame on, to put whatever we were using on, like a table, basically. And we would use a tree trunk sometimes. We would use something that was out in nature, is the point. And that is the last thing I liked. The only thing I'm going to say other than that, I'm going to give it 4 things I liked. I did find it to be entertaining. When my landlord walked in, that was the highlight of the afternoon. So it was entertaining. It was a fun movie to watch. I laughed a lot. I was like, a lot. I liked it. I did like the movie. As far as what is the grade I would give this movie, I would give it an F. For witchcraft facts, it gets a straight up F. I think this might be I wonder, is this I'm trying to think if I gave Suspiria an F last week. I can't remember, but this movie gets an F. I think I might have given that movie an F, but this one is a lower F than that one. This is the lowest of the low. I think I just counted them out to you how many vices, and it only has 4 virtues, and I had to squeeze those 4 out. This movie is awful as far as witchcraft accuracy is concerned. Awful. So that's that. If you want to be entertained, you will be entertained by it. Possibly. Some people think it's corny. Some people are entertained by it. So you may possibly be entertained by it. But if you're looking to learn anything about witches, this is not the move. And if you're wondering if this has any truth to it, it's totally fabricated. The story itself, what the witch can do, all of it is fabricated. So this gets an F. This gets a F. I'll give it like 4%. That's how many points I'm going to give it. 4 out of 100. That's it. All right, guys. It's time for me to get going. So if you feel like it, check out this movie, and maybe you'll get scared too. That's the best you can get out of it, is hopefully you'll get a jump scare from it. Thank you for checking me out, and come back not next week. I'm going to be in Philadelphia next week, but the week after that, I will be back with another episode of The Witch Trials. See you later.